The story you are about to hear begins the way the NBA's biggest bombshells usually emerge, with that uncomfortable feeling in your stomach, a whisper that turns into a debate, a question that becomes a rumor, and before you realize it, everyone is discussing it as if it were already inevitable. And between us, it's not without reason. When Anthony Davis's name appears connected to the Golden State Warriors, especially in a persistent and repeated way, and accompanied by serious analysis from the American media, it's impossible not to sound the alarm. This is not an isolated comment, but a narrative that gained shape, weight, and heat within hours. And the more you look at it, the more you sense something is there. When this topic crossed my path for the first time, my instinct was immediate: investigate. Not a quick glance, but a deep dive, searching through every detail, every piece of information, every statement that could strengthen or dismantle the hypothesis. The result of that investigation? Something that surprises even those who are used to the madness of the league. But before diving into this whirlwind, there is another piece of news shaking the NBA and directly influencing the landscape of the coming weeks. The fall of the Pelicans head coach had been written for some time. It wasn't just a matter of poor results, although 2 wins in 12 games explain a large part of the frustration. It was a combination of factors squeezing the club like a vice: expectations that vanished quickly, a worn-out locker room, an irritated fan base, and above all, the feeling that nothing was flowing. The team began the season with that old promise of, if everything goes right, we can go far. But, as always, that everything never came. Zion once again out of rhythm, physical issues, weak performances, pieces that don't fit, a heavy atmosphere. It was a disaster waiting to happen. Behind the scenes, it had been said for months that the squad had lost respect for the coaching staff. When that happens, it doesn't matter how talented the coach is or what he did in the past. The end becomes just a matter of time. Fans were so fed up that even petitions began circulating demanding his dismissal. So, when the decision became official, no one really fell off their chair. The surprise, if there was any, was in the timing and in what comes next. The interim coach takes over, tries to reorganize the house, tries to revive what can still be revived, but the atmosphere in New Orleans remains increasingly dangerous. Dangerous enough to reignite a discussion that seemed buried: the possible relocation of the franchise. NBA expansion is expected, but if it does not come at the desired pace, there is always the alternative of relocating a fragile team. And few teams today seem as vulnerable as the Pelicans. The idea of NBA basketball returning to Seattle has breathed again thanks to the permanent chaos in New Orleans. It does not mean it will happen, but it means the door is more open than at any moment in the last decade. When the fan base begins to lose faith, when the league itself sees instability, everything becomes possible, including turning a sporting collapse into a change of address. And while the Pelicans try to find some direction, one of their most beloved players, Trey Murphy, tries to keep the flame alive, asking fans not to give up on the team. It is a beautiful request, but a difficult one to fulfill when the scenario is so discouraging. Some try to hold on to hope, but for many, what remains is anguish, frustration, and the feeling that something big is about to happen, and not necessarily something good. After this tense, almost apocalyptic context, we arrive at what has become the true center of NBA discussions in recent hours: Anthony Davis and the Golden State Warriors. The question hanging in the air is simple, direct, and frightening at the same time. Could we really see Davis next to Stephen Curry? It seems unreal at first glance, but the more you analyze it, the less impossible it becomes. The Warriors are standing at a historic crossroads. This may be their last real chance to win another title in the Curry era, and the front office knows it. Internally, there is an understanding that the current roster is not enough and that something radical must happen. It's in this environment that Davis's name gains strength. The technical fit is almost perfect: mobility, rim protection, defensive versatility, the ability to play in the fast and intelligent rhythm of the system, physical potential. All of this is exactly what Golden State has always sought in its ideal center. Yes, Davis's value is low right now. Yes, the injuries are concerning. Yes, he is not living the peak he once had. But that has never killed the interest of some franchises. Many executives believe that with the right structure, strict physical preparation, and a positive competitive environment, Davis can regain his explosion and mobility. He is not close to 40. He still has fuel, still has the level to be decisive, still has room to rediscover a more dominant version of himself. That is why, for many, he remains a valuable asset, especially for those looking for an immediate leap. When Sam Quinn, a respected analyst in the United States, stated that Davis would be the player who would give Curry his best chance to win a fifth title, the internet simply blew up. Because when it comes from someone of that caliber, it doesn't sound like random guessing. It sounds like a concrete reading of what is being discussed behind closed doors. It sounds like something that is indeed on the table. But there is no magic in the NBA. To acquire Davis, Golden State would need to give up important pieces. The name most mentioned is Jonathan Kuminga, who currently represents the future star of the franchise. And along with him, the name that stalls any discussion, Draymond Green. That is the point that freezes any debate. Draymond is the emotional and tactical heart of the team. He's not just a player, he is an entire moving system. His departure would mean dismantling an engine that has supported the Warriors' identity for years. For this reason, many believe the front office would never let him go. But here comes the detail no one likes to admit. If you don't give Draymond, you might not get Davis. And then another, even more daring alternative emerges, involving a third team to complete the pieces, create salary space, and make all sides agree. The kind of chaotic operation you only see when the league is on the verge of entering full madness mode. DeMarcus Cousins, who knows Davis as few do, added more fuel to the fire by saying publicly that the combination of him with Curry would be interesting. And when a former teammate speaks like that, it is not just an opinion, it is insight. It is someone who has seen up close how Davis operates and imagines the impact he could have in another system. But the whirlwind doesn't stop there. Other teams have emerged as potential destinations if a trade truly happens. Detroit, for example, has become a hot name. The team is living a good moment, leading its conference, and according to analysts, could repeat what the Raptors did with Kawhi. Go all in search of an immediate leap, risking everything on a player who can completely change a season. Other more improbable but still interesting scenarios appeared through sheer force. Hornets, Kings, Raptors, all involving massive combinations of players, draft picks, and total restructurings. The truth is that even with his value down, Davis still sparks interest, because desperate teams seek talent. Ambitious teams seek stars, and Davis, despite his flaws, is still a star. At this point, when you observe all these possibilities circulating at the same time, you realize it is not only about Anthony Davis being traded, it is about the chain reaction that a move of this magnitude could trigger. The entire NBA moves like a living organism, where a single decision alters the dynamics of several teams, several conferences, and even multiple narratives that the league itself nurtures. And that is why this story needs to continue from exactly where we stopped. The moment when Davis's name ceases to be just speculation and becomes the thread stitching together the anxiety, desperation, and ambition of various franchises. If you follow the NBA closely, you know the league lives in cycles, and some teams see opportunity where others only see risk. Detroit, for example, appears in this story as a team that stopped being a punchline and turned into an organized, confident squad that is, above all, ready to take risks. The proposal involving Davis going there is not absurd. In fact, it makes sense within a context where young franchises tend to accelerate their timelines when they notice their window has opened earlier than expected. Detroit is winning, is building an identity, and could indeed decide that the missing piece is someone with precisely the defensive impact and interior presence that Davis provides, even on his bad days. The comparison with what the Raptors did with Kawhi naturally returns to the table. In 2018, almost no one believed Toronto would have the courage to break its structure to bet everything on a player who could leave the following year. but they did, and the result was a historic title. It is exactly this type of reference that drives mid-level or emerging teams to consider an all-in even in the face of Davis's physical instability. Sometimes the opportunity does not knock twice, but if Detroit represents strategic boldness, other franchises represent pure necessity. This is the case with the Hornets, Kings, and Raptors, all mentioned in trade scenarios. These teams are living completely different moments, but they share a common pain: the absence of a star who can truly change the franchise's reality. A player capable of raising not just performance, but relevance, prestige, image. And that is why, even with Davis at a low point, even with his injuries, even with his drop in mobility, there is still demand. Because stars do not grow on trees, and many franchises are willing to bet on raw talent even when it is worn down. And it does not stop there. The rumor involving Dallas was perhaps one of the most discussed, not because the trade seemed likely, but because of its emotional context. The team is sinking in a strange season, performing well below expectations despite having one of the greatest offensive talents of the century. Amid this chaos, imagining Davis landing there feels like a last-life raft for a team that seems to lose control more each week. But the question that echoes is always the same: what would Dallas actually be willing to offer? And more importantly, why give up valuable assets now when Davis's market value is at its lowest? It is exactly this dynamic that makes the negotiation so complex. But among all the scenarios raised, one in particular blends fear and fascination in equal measure: the real possibility that Golden State decides it has no more time to waste. Even those who do not support the Warriors know that Stephen Curry does not deserve to end his career without at least one last legitimate attempt at a championship, and with the current roster, that attempt simply does not exist. That is why some executives believe this may be the moment the front office finally makes an aggressive decision, perhaps the most aggressive since the arrival of Kevin Durant. The problem is that every aggressive decision requires sacrifice. And the sacrifice here would likely go by the name of Jonathan Kuminga, one of the most valuable young players in the league. Letting him go would be like publicly admitting that the generational transition project did not work. And that recognition is difficult for any franchise, especially one that spent years trying to balance the present with the future. The situation becomes even more complex when discussing the possibility of including another veteran player in the package to finalize the deal. The idea is to reorganize salaries, balance values, and allow the Warriors to bring in Davis without completely destroying their structure. But even this intermediate solution carries risks. Losing veteran pieces can shake chemistry, affect leadership, weaken internal bonds that sustain the franchise's culture. While all of this unfolds on the surface, inside the franchises, the atmosphere is completely different. Executives analyze film, statistics, medical history, internal reports, projections, and financial impacts. Scouts rewatch old games to understand how far Davis can return, or whether that is merely fantasy. Directors quietly debate whether it is worth betting the future of the franchise on a player whose body has repeatedly shown it cannot handle long seasons. On the other hand, analysts argue that the Warriors' structure would be the perfect antidote to extend his career. And while executives discuss, players also comment. DeMarcus Cousins' recent statement is not just an opinion. It is a seed. Former teammates know details the public never sees. They know which systems benefit which player. They know who adapts quickly and who struggles. When Cousins says Davis would work alongside Curry, that carries weight, and a lot of it. It fuels internal conversations. It shifts perceptions. At the same time, fans watch all of this as if it were a soap opera, divided between excitement, fear, and uncertainty. On one side, the possibility of seeing Curry next to one of the most talented players in the league. On the other, the concern that the trade might destroy more than it builds and leave the team even more vulnerable. And while the potential Warriors trade was boiling, another detail quietly surfaced behind the scenes. Some teams are reportedly conditioning their interest in Davis on weight loss and the recovery of part of the mobility that defined his peak. It sounds simple, but it says a lot about how the market views the player today. He is still valuable, but no longer seen as a guarantee. He is a risk investment, a risk few are brave enough to take, which is exactly why following the rumor mill becomes so fascinating. This is the point where narratives begin to overlap, because while Davis becomes the center of the soap opera, other stories continue to evolve in parallel, influencing the league's mood, context, and projections. Luka's performances, for example, explode at the exact moment Dallas falls into unprecedented crisis. When Luka scores 40, 50 points and carries his team to unexpected wins, the impact is not just sporting, it directly affects internal discussions about reinforcements, urgency, pressure. And this, of course, shapes how Dallas evaluates market opportunities, including the opportunity involving Davis. But it is not just Luka. In Portland, Deni Avdija is improving so much that he becomes a real awards candidate. In Phoenix, Booker is playing at the most efficient level of his career. In Toronto, the consistency of Barrett and Poeltl translates into consecutive wins. In Oklahoma, Shea and Chet show they can be the most dominant duo of the coming years. And in Denver, Jokic continues to build a season that defies logic, numbers, and any narrative attempting to diminish him. All of this matters. All of this connects. Because every team that rises reduces its desperation, and every team that collapses increases its urgency. And it is precisely in this type of oscillation that major trades happen. And here is the secret that few notice. The story of Davis is not the story of one player. It is the story of an entire league trying to figure out where it is going. When the narrative reaches this stage where the lines begin to intersect and every rumor starts influencing multiple teams at the same time, it becomes impossible not to notice that we are dealing with something far greater than a simple trade. What is happening with Anthony Davis represents, in many ways, the perfect portrait of the modern NBA. A league driven by short cycles, fragile windows, risky decisions, and the constant need to reinvent strategies before it becomes too late. That is why, as we continue from here, everything must fit into this broader scenario, as if we were assembling a huge mosaic that is finally beginning to reveal its full shape. The next piece of that mosaic directly involves the atmosphere within the Lakers, which is quietly beginning to crack around the edges. As valuable as Davis may be, there is a growing perception that the current project no longer supports its own ambitions. The roster does not fit, expectations are not met, injuries accumulate, and the group's morale suffers impacts that, from the outside, look like mere statistical details, but from the inside, function as small daily earthquakes. The big question is, how long can a franchise coexist with this emotional instability before giving in to the need to restart everything? This environment creates a domino effect. Younger players become anxious. Veterans begin questioning the direction. Assistant coaches try to maintain tactical discipline while realizing that certain decisions are beyond their control. And of course, operations directors must deal with pressure from supporters, the media, and even agents who are constantly trying to understand what the next move will be. It is at this stage that Davis's name becomes more than a rumor. It becomes a genuine tool for restructuring. If a profound change is inevitable, starting with him might be the first brick to be removed. But at the same time the Lakers analyze their own crisis, the Warriors are also doing their own calculations, and these calculations are far from simple. There is a silent yet gigantic pressure surrounding Stephen Curry. He remains at the highest level, keeps delivering elite performances, keeps carrying the team on several nights, and this creates a problem for the front office. How can they justify wasting this level of excellence without giving him a roster that matches it? This dilemma places the Warriors' leadership in an uncomfortable position, because any poorly calculated move can cost both the present and the future. And here lies the crucial point. The pursuit of Davis is not a desperate attempt to make noise. It is one last major move for competitive survival. They know that if they do not do something big now, they may not get another chance. And it is precisely this urgency that connects Golden State's story to the fragile situation of the Lakers. One has what the other might want. One is declining. The other is in a hurry. That combination always produces intense negotiations. The central question paralyzing all discussions is the emotional and tactical balance of the roster. Even if Davis fits perfectly into the system, it is impossible to ignore the emotional impact of losing important rotation pieces. A roster does not function solely through talent. It functions through habits, trust, chemistry, bonds built over time. When you move a central piece, you shake the entire foundation. And that is exactly what makes the decision so delicate. It is not only about who arrives, it is about who leaves, and how that will redefine everything the team believes itself to be. While these potential trades heat up, the narrative becomes even more complex when we observe what is happening with other stars in the league. Shea's performance, for instance, turns the Thunder into a powerhouse much earlier than any analyst predicted. Chet fits in as if he had been in the NBA for 5 seasons. And that completely changes the balance of power in the West. Every time a team becomes too strong, others need to react faster, accelerate processes, pursue aggressive solutions. And it is in this type of competitive environment that major trades happen because nobody wants to be left behind. Meanwhile, Denver keeps winning in a manner as silent as it is deadly. Jokic continues racking up triple-doubles as if they were training sessions. The Nuggets' consistency creates a psychologically devastating effect on the conference. To win the West, you must defeat them. And to defeat them, you must possess a special weapon. This is where the Warriors find themselves forced to reflect on their own combat strength. With the current roster, it is unlikely they could beat Denver in a 7-game series, and that pushes the front office even further into a corner. All this pressure is directly connected to Davis's name because out of all the stars available, or potentially available, he is the only one who combines at the same time defensive impact, physical presence, versatility, and a ceiling that could rise again with the right motivation. He does not need to be the 2020 version of himself. He only needs to be disciplined, healthy, and functional within the Warriors system. And that alone would be enough to give Curry the real chance he needs. But none of this happens in isolation. Luka's situation in Dallas, for instance, is one of the most influential factors in shaping the market because it creates a tension between optimism and desperation. Every time he scores more than 40 points, he increases the pressure on the front office and further exposes the structural weaknesses of the current roster. When a team has a star of that caliber, it automatically loses the right to be mediocre. This fuels rumors, fuels speculation, fuels trades that might not exist in any other context. And when Dallas looks at its reality, it becomes inevitable to question whether Davis would or would not be an emergency solution, even if only a temporary one. Meanwhile, other stories continue to emerge, complementing the league's wider picture. Avdija rises in Portland and begins to attract attention he never received before. Booker plays a season so efficient that it forces people to revise their own criticisms. Toronto becomes a difficult team to face because it has found balance between youth and veteran leadership. Oklahoma becomes an unstoppable machine even without relying on free throws to score. And Denver keeps running over everything with a calculated coldness that borders on frightening. These parallel developments are not just isolated statistics. They shape every franchise's decision-making. They dictate the pace of the next trades. They determine who is willing to take risks and who can still afford to wait. The NBA has never been so dynamic, so volatile, so unpredictable. And that is why the saga involving Davis and potential destinations grows by the day. Because everyone knows that if a piece of this size moves, another 20 will move immediately. And when you put all these pieces together, you realize we are watching the beginning of a silent reconfiguration within the league. Nothing is happening officially, but everything is happening behind the scenes. And that is the most fascinating part. Before any trade is even announced, the NBA has already changed. The basketball world is about to witness a potential significant shift in the NBA landscape, and this twist could come directly from the Pacific. Recent reports suggest that the Golden State Warriors, one of the league's most influential franchises, are conducting discreet negotiations to sign Sotto, the 2.18-meter-tall Filipino center, to join their roster for the 2025 season. This news has sparked great excitement among fans and analysts, not only because of the technical contribution Sotto may offer, but also due to the strong cultural symbolism his presence carries. If confirmed, this signing goes beyond the idea of just a sports reinforcement. It represents a strategic step that could redefine the ties between the San Francisco team and one of the largest fan bases spread around the world, especially in Asia. Kai Sotto is not just a standout athlete due to his height or the unique skills he showcases on the court. He reflects an inspiring journey that began in the Philippines, within a culture where basketball is more than a sport. It's a national passion. From a young age, Kai showed signs that he could achieve something extraordinary. As the years went by, he not only grew physically but also technically, proving to be much more than a traditional post player. His modern profile, which combines wingspan, mobility, and a reliable mid-range shot, has been catching the attention of NBA scouts and executives. Today's basketball requires versatility, and Kai seems to have been shaped with this new mentality in mind. He can impact the game both defensively, with his ability to block shots and protect the rim, and offensively, where he offers a wider range of possibilities by stepping away from the fixed center stereotype. His international journey is further proof of his adaptability and growth. Leaving the Philippines as a teenager, Sotto showed courage and vision, opting to develop his career in more competitive environments. His first major international experience was in the Australian League, the NBL, where he faced physically imposing opponents with high technical levels. Even at a young age, he stood out for his presence on defense and contributions on offense. Later, when he moved to the Japanese B-League, his game matured even more. There, he not only solidified his role as one of the league's best athletes, but also became a reference figure, proudly representing his Filipino roots. This journey, marked by challenges and overcoming obstacles, has earned Kai Sotto respect not only for what he does on the court, but also for what he represents off of it. In a scenario where the NBA is looking to expand its international influence, having a player with global appeal, especially in a market as engaged as the Filipino one, is a rare opportunity. And the Warriors, always attentive to innovation both on and off the court, seem to have seen this clearly. From a technical standpoint, his arrival could fill gaps that have been long discussed by analysts and fans of the team. The lack of a dominant center who combines physical strength and tactical intelligence has been pointed out as one of the recurring weaknesses of the roster. Kai, with his combination of size, coordination, and game-reading ability, fits exactly into this profile. He has the potential to be a reliable rim protector, offering an intimidating presence in the paint, while also contributing offensively with accurate mid-range shots and even smart passes that help the flow of plays. More than that, he could strengthen the team's offensive transition, helping with defensive rebounds that start fast breaks and continuing the fast, fluid style that has become the Warriors' trademark in recent years. His versatility would allow the coach to adjust the rotation more freely, offering tactical variations that would be hard to contain. Symbolically and culturally, Kai Sotto's arrival would represent a historic moment. The Bay Area, where the team is based, is home to one of the largest Filipino communities outside of the Philippines, which would create an immediate connection between fans and player. It would be a natural union, with the potential to attract even more fans to the Chase Center, the team's modern arena, as well as increased digital engagement and media coverage of the team in new markets. The impact goes beyond the sport. The signing of Kai could be understood as a strategic move that reinforces the franchise's global positioning. The Warriors have always been at the forefront of marketing, innovation, and inclusion, and Kai Sotto, as a global figure, fits perfectly into this project. With his presence, the team would not only strengthen its image as a multicultural team, but also open doors for business partnerships with brands interested in reaching the Asian market. Moreover, it's hard to ignore the inspiring potential of this journey. For young people in the Philippines and other developing countries, seeing Kai Sotto being signed by an NBA giant is concrete proof that bold dreams can be achieved with effort, talent, and perseverance. His story of overcoming challenges and discipline would inspire a new generation of athletes to pursue their goals, even if they seem distant at first. On the court, Kai wouldn't be alone. By joining a team with experienced players, he would have the chance to develop even further. Under the guidance of coach Steve Kerr, known for his ability to bring out the best in each player, Sotto would have access to a solid technical structure, focused not just on immediate results, but on long-term growth. Kerr's philosophy is not just to win, but to form complete athletes who understand the game and can make decisions with confidence. Another crucial point is the chance for Sotto to learn from the veterans on the team. Players like Stephen Curry and Draymond Green offer more than just talent on the court. They are examples of leadership, work ethic, and commitment to the team. For Kai, sharing the locker room with these figures would be a valuable opportunity for practical learning, absorbing the experience of those who have already been through major decisions and carried the team in crucial moments. Draymond, for example, is a defensive and game-reading specialist. His ability to guide teammates and command the defense in real time could serve as an intensive course for Kai, accelerating his adaptation to the intensity and complexity of NBA play. Similarly, being around Curry would allow Sotto to understand up close the mindset of an athlete who revolutionized modern basketball. In the context of the current roster, Kai would bring unique characteristics that would expand the team's range of possibilities. He could be used in taller lineups, reinforcing the paint, or even in lighter schemes, using his mobility to guard players in switches and coverages. His potential as a facilitator on offense, through passes and smart movements, would also fit well into the offensive system based on cuts and fast movements. By joining the Golden State Warriors, Kai wouldn't just be taking another step in his career. He would be writing a new chapter in NBA history, where a young player from the Philippines breaks boundaries and joins one of the most iconic franchises in world basketball. His name would become part of a select group of players who not only wore the jersey of a great team, but also contributed to expanding the global reach of the sport. So, did you like the video? Then leave a like to support the channel and subscribe so you don't miss any updates. Also, hit the bell to get all the content firsthand. Thanks for watching and see you next time.